Now, on the third anniversary of the Garissa University attack, the college held a 10-kilometer road race dubbed Resilience and Cohesion as a salute to the 148 lives that were lost in the 2015 terror attack and also to foster peace in the region. The students and school administration feel safer with improved security in and around the school.
One by one, they registered for the iconic run. Young men and women who dare the 10-kilometer road race in a show of resilience while embracing a cohesive spirit as they marked the third year since Garissa University Al-Shabaab terror attack. Students still fight the bad memories.
Ukilog in kwa account ya Garissa University, unapatana na hizo pictures kwanza, and then kwanza unapata trauma, and then with time you overcome the fear.
However, they choose to focus on education and the opportunities that come with it.
Right now I can say that my life is comfortable because what made me come here is education. We have very different talents. It's a place to innovate yourself. If you have talent, you can use it to get where you want.
Enrollment has since shot up from 750 students in 2016 to about 1,200 students in 2018.
This is a clear indicator that the power of education is greater or is mightier than the power of gun.
Although some students turned up to arrange for transfers from the Northeastern College, most of them have stayed on and are making good every chance to progress academically.
When I came for transfer, I was shown the security of the university. I realized that there is enough security, even far more better than other universities.
Sports now present a fresh arena to honor the 148 people who died in the attack. Over 200 athletes from across the country participated in the event, stamping the efforts made toward peace and security in Garissa.
We don't take it lightly where 147 students were killed. We want to make it an international event. Friends and all those people who are able to contribute, we are calling upon them to do so.
Winners carried home 60,000 shillings each.
It was very tough. It was too hot. But God, but if you work hard, you will in easy.
With every sweat drop, the athletes can only wish success for Garissa University students' hard work for a greater future. Ray Polo, KTN News.
All right, so that happened in Garissa today, but Patrick Gadar is with me here on The Big Story. Patrick, it was a rather quiet day for the third anniversary. Have we accepted and moved on and forgotten about it?
Well, I think this is a typical Kenyan way of responding to these sorts of attacks. Or to the anniversaries of these sorts of attacks. I think sort of the low-key either commemoration or even sometimes we just gloss over it and let it pass. And lots of times the commemorations, if they are held, are sort of to signify resilience or how we have come back from this. One thing that I find missing is that we never really ask what went wrong and whether we have actually fixed the problems that led to this sort of tragedy. And I find that many times that we keep ourselves, because we don't ask these questions, we are always on tenterhooks and we don't know when the next one will come and we don't prepare for it. I'll give an example just very quickly. If you look at what happened last year in Manchester in the UK with the attack that they had, you know, they did a report, an investigation into the attack and recommendations about what they should do to prevent those attacks going on. Here you hear nothing, whether it's Westgate or whether it's Garissa. There is absolutely no investigation. In fact, one senior police officer interviewed by The Nation said that they learned nothing from Westgate. This is why we are constantly vulnerable, because we're not learning the lessons and then implementing those to ensure that the next attack can be stopped.
Patrick, what are the questions we should be asking ourselves today? Third anniversary of this, taking a look at what's happened, in Somalia, even though we're saying that it seems like we learned from lessons before. But what are some of the key questions we should be asking on this third anniversary of the Garissa University attack?
Well, I think for me, the major ones is how did it happen? And what were the failures that led to it? And have those actually been addressed and fixed so that we can now say that the students are no longer vulnerable? It's not just at that university. Are there other universities, other installations, other malls, where we have actually instituted measures to ensure that attacks such as we've seen in Garissa and in Westgate cannot happen? I find that we don't really ask those questions, and we are very uncomfortable about asking them. Lots of people keep saying that, oh, that is banging the terrorist drum, sort of feeding their propaganda, or it is undermining our security forces. It really is not. It is insisting that they do their work, that they do their job, and where there are failures, that they fix those failures so that we are all collectively safer.
Where are we towards 2020, in your view?
2020...
the withdrawal of the troops.
Right. Again, this is a withdrawal from of AMISOM or the mooted withdrawal of AMISOM from Somalia. I personally don't think it's going to happen. It's clear that Somalia is not ready to stand on its own. If you look at these attacks that just happened today, it's telling that they were targeted at AMISOM, and there was really no talk about any response from the Somali National Army, who they're supposed to be mentoring and bringing up. So we really have to ask ourselves, whether it is viable that if AMISOM were to leave in 2 years' time, that you would have an army in Somalia or a military in Somalia that is able to withstand Shabab and actually roll them back. I think that is highly unlikely. And we've even seen it from the reactions to the September UN resolution, from our own leaders in East Africa, who are saying that no, in fact, AMISOM should be reinforced, not drawn back as is happening now. The other thing to remember is we've always sort of played a bit of a cat and mouse game with this idea of withdrawal. Now, when it suits us to kind of put pressure on the West, we will threaten with withdrawal. So we saw it last year and the year before when the EU cut its funding for AMISOM. That suddenly there was all this talk of, Kenyatta banging his chest saying, we are going to withdraw if you don't bring it back. Now, when it looks like the UN, now that the UN has voted to say, all right, fine, withdraw them, we are going back to say, no, they should stay. So there are other dynamics here that are being utilized, and there are other interests that are being sought that that are not necessarily tied to the effort to try and stabilize Somalia.
Yeah, to the common goal. I want to talk about the propaganda war for just a moment because, like we said before the break, for sure, Al-Shabaab, do the best they can, sometimes to overstate some of those figures, obviously to their advantage. But even in terms of just winning the war, the hearts and minds, I would say, not just of those in Somalia, but also of the nations that are contributing to that. Solomon Sarwanja himself told us in Uganda it's mixed reactions to what just happened there with our own troops being killed. Here's a tweet from Cavan's World, who says, terrorism is a human condition, a human value. Bullets and bombs are not enough to eradicate it. Justice, development, and engagement are important too. How are we doing when it comes to just rallying everybody in the region towards this common goal of defeating Al-Shabaab?
Well, I don't think we are doing very well. Taking Kenya as an example, our invasion of Somalia in 2011 was not the result of a discussion or a public discourse on whether we needed to do this. And I don't think that the government has actually invested in rallying people to support the effort. There has been no public discussion, no public debate as to whether we should keep the troops there and what would be the costs And
even why
the
it would be
reasons
important for
exactly.
I mean, for us, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, so these are very much sort of being run at the governmental level, people making decisions, but not really calling up for the public support. That would mean that these sorts of events, I mean, we'd see this as a more long-term effort rather than just focusing on the short-term attacks that happen here and there. I think also the fact is for us, we've been kind of shielded for a long time from what's actually happening in Somalia. And it's only when we have major casualties that it seems to seep into our news. You know, we don't really talk about it. What are our troops actually doing in Somalia? We've had issues being raised about whether they're trading in charcoal, you know, whether they're dealing with Al-Shabaab, you know, etc. But that never seems then to result in action. You know, it will make noise, there'll be a fuss for a short time, and then it will disappear. Yet we have troops there. Those are Kenyans who are there. When Elade happened, then a year later you had Kulbio. We should have been asking, how is it that our army is so vulnerable to these terrorists? To date, we have no report about any official investigation into it, any person who was held to account for that failure, what changes have been made to ensure that it doesn't happen again. All of this we can only speculate about because the government doesn't come out and the military doesn't come out and tell us these things. And there is a real cost to them for not doing that, for not cultivating the public support.
Yeah.
As you very well know, this is a war that is not just fought on the battlefield, it's also fought in the airwaves.
Right.
And for as long as you don't cultivate the sorts of credibility that means when you speak, people will believe you. When you say we only lost 4 people, that the majority of people will believe that what you're saying is the truth. If we don't invest in that, then that means that we are basically at the same level at Shabaab, and it becomes pretty much just a roll of the dice who you will believe.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and that's not how you want to fight this. So I think for us, we need to invest in a better way of informing the public when attacks do happen, and to remember that it is, even when you suffer setbacks, you know, it is not that setback that matters. It is what it means.
Yes, and what people always say, if you start to accept a setback, then it's playing into the propaganda of the terrorists.
Well, that's not true. You know, you can accept that you've suffered a setback and then start articulating how you do better. You know, and actually take it seriously and start improving your systems.
Okay.
As we saw in Elade, keeping quiet about that attack and about what happened simply opened us up for another attack a year later.
Yeah, in
when you look at Westgate and you compare Westgate with Garissa, which is the anniversary we have today, you know, those attacks were very similar. 4 people go into this place, they are killing people inside as your troops are massed outside. You know, so because we didn't tackle what went wrong with at Westgate, then we got hit at Garissa. So it's quite important that we deal with those.
All right, Gadara, I want us to listen to the leader of majority in the National Assembly, who is also the Member of Parliament for Garissa Township. That's Aden Duale. And he was talking about, you know, the tremendous improvements in security, but particularly about the work of KDF, because I'd like us to speak about, you know, the security measures that are taken internally. So this is what he was saying about particularly the work of KDF in the country in terms of, you know, keeping us safe from external aggression. Listen.
Since the Garissa University attack in 2015, that happened in my constituency, where over 145 innocent, promising students' life was lost. Northeastern has, in a big, substantial measure, been very, very peaceful. The men and the women, the number of security forces deployed, both in all sectors, including the intelligence, the community working with the security agents has greatly improved and reduced the number of terror attacks in northeastern province. And our KDF serving under AMISOM have done a very, very commendable job on the other side of the border.
Your response, Gadar?
Well, again, he's speaking in broad brushstrokes. There's been improvements, doesn't say how it's improved. I mean, the fact is, since 2013 to date, pretty much, attacks across our northeastern border continue to happen. You know, police posts are regularly attacked. You hear of actions in the Boni Forest, you know, ETC, which let's not forget was supposed to have been a 6-month operation. It continues till today, you know. So the fact is, when we talk about improvements, we've got to have a measure. How have they improved? You know, again, lots of when we hear about attacks, when it's major attacks, perhaps happening in Nairobi, you know, or in Mombasa. But there's a continual stream of attacks, of cross-border incursions.
And we've seen them coming in, attacking our communication masts and, you know,
exactly. And you remember just the other day that the teachers were leaving from places like Wajir, you know, and Mandera. You know, these are real things. They are happening. So it's I mean, for an MP to simply sit down and say, well, it has improved, we really shouldn't allow him, you know, to get away with that. How has it improved, and what have they actually done to hold the KDF to account in the areas, in the places where they have clearly failed? In Westgate, in LRD, in Kulbio, we've heard nothing about that.
All right, so I want to talk about, I mean, just what we do, you know, to keep ourselves secure within the country. Of course, in Garissa, after that attack, we know that they're using biometric gadgets. We know that they have armed officers at the gate. They, in fact, have 3 watchtowers and a perimeter wall. They have 24-hour CCTV cameras. So that is just at the Garissa University following that attack. But do you get a sense that, you know, just in terms of our internal security, forget what's happening inside Somalia because we have the AMISOM troops there, but just within our borders, that we are doing enough to secure the country, to gain intelligence, and to be able to then repulse such attacks?
Well, I think I'll say 2 things. First, as you hint at, simply putting biometric gadgets, fences, troops at Garissa University is not sufficient, because it's not the case that they will always go back to hit Garissa University. We should be asking, what about the other universities? What about the other malls and places where people congregate? Are they safe? When you walk into your supermarket, you know, how safe are you in there? What do they have there that would stop guys coming in? And secondly, I think we also need to be cognizant of the fact that when we talk of a war on terror, we are using a broad brush. You know, that yes, it is inspired to a large extent by what is happening in Somalia, but we have our own internal insurgencies, you know, internal grievances that are driving these sorts of attacks. Lots of them have to do with the behavior of the government itself and of its forces. You know, when they're disappearing people across in the northeast and in places like Mombasa, when they're radicalizing guys by being seen to sort of be heavy-handed in any responses that they have. You know, so we've got to be aware of this and to start asking, what are we fighting? You know, and what is the essence of I mean, what drives the attacks that we then see? And if we can start discussing that and getting down to dealing with the core grievances that people have, which are real. You know, unless we solve that, then we'll always be vulnerable to having attacks coming our way. And don't forget, the people who hit us in Garissa were Kenyans.
Right.
You know, and they weren't poor Kenyans. You had lawyers, you know, in the ETC. So we need to really address those fundamental grievances that they have. The final thing I might add is I think our media needs to take a much more proactive role in informing the public about what's going on. Right now we have 2 trials of the people who are linked to Westgate and of people who are linked to Garissa. You rarely see reports about how those trials have gone. The Garissa one has been pretty bad in the sense that it's been constantly postponed. It's been start, stop, start, stop.
Yeah.
They can't find the magistrate or whatever. It is 3 years later.
Yeah.
Yet there is no spotlight being put on it and asked, why are we not concluding these trials? What's the problem? What are we learning from these trials?
What information are we gleaning? Yes.
Exactly. I mean, one example I'll give is from the Westgate trial. Very quickly. Yeah. On the Westgate trial, they showed that the bodies that they were claiming, that the government was claiming, was a body of a terrorist guy. When it was taken for DNA analysis, turned out not to be.
Okay.
So if they say terrorists didn't escape, they were all killed, here are their bodies, but those aren't their bodies. Where are the terrorists?
Indeed.
And can we trust the government when it tells us we got all of them?
We got everyone. Okay, I mean, I think we all remember what you said in the midst of our conversation, that the war on terror cannot just be fought on the ground in Somalia, but also on the airwaves. Thank you very much. Patrick Gadara, who is a journalist, has been following the attacks and the subsequent responses by AMISOM and the various governments. Thank you very much. Patrick Gadara, Byron Adera, and Solomon Serwanja, as well as Sophia Wanuna. That's the big story tonight. KTN Prime is up next with Ben Kitili. Thanks very much for watching. I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole. Good night.